because it primarily is for workshop jobs, basically. So anything you can do in a workshop, and farm plots don't really qualify there. Now you could make the argument that Toady should treat a farm plot like a workshop that has a variable footprint, and I'll leave that to those of you who to push on Toady if you think he'll do that. But I don't know that that's necessarily an improvement even then. I don't know that I would want to have the manager determining what plants I queued necessarily. Generally speaking, if I make a plot, I probably want everything planted that I can get planted. But yeah, if you've played any Dwarf Fortress at all, think about all the nitpicking industries you have to get set up along the way, and imagine how much easier that's going to be once you can automate a substantial portion of that through the manager. And that's basically what's been implemented here. Um, it's it's going to be an incredibly powerful thing going forward at some point. Okay, so let's get our miners done here. You'll see that they're slowly grinding through the ore. Not just our dedicated miners, but these two that we've drafted temporarily are also doing mining jobs. Here comes one of our cats. And while we're waiting on our miners, I would like to encourage those of you who haven't already, please, 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 if you can, go out and donate to the kids. There's a link directly below the stream. We're doing this specifically for sick children. This is all the monies collected are going directly to Riley Children's Hospital here in Indianapolis. This is the third year running I've been collecting money for them through the Extra Life event, and through your generosity, we're able to help a lot of kids. Keep in mind, if you donate at least $10, I'm going to name a dwarf after you. You will be immortalized for all time in this fortress of horrors. I mean, this stream fortress. We're going to set up our initial temporary stockpile here. So let's go ahead and I'll query that. And at this point, I want everything other than furniture pretty much in this stockpile. All the bins, all the barrels, doesn't matter what it's stored in. I don't care. It'll take from anywhere. And we're going to make sure that it holds just about everything. Now, the categories I left out, stone, wood, furniture, I don't want to store here for a reason. Stone and wood, there's so many of them, my dwarves at this point would be drowning in the hauling labors. I don't yet want to store those items. That's just going to chew up too much time. Stone and wood are not particularly valuable. If a thief really wants to steal my stone and wood, I'll let him. I don't care. Wood is infinitely renewal, and the stone, we're basically sitting on more stone than we would ever use in a million billion years of Dwarf Fortress play anyway. So those things I don't care about. Furniture, what little furniture we're going to create right here at the very beginning, I'm going to probably want to build. I'm not going to want to store it so much. We may make some extras so that I can, build only the best quality stuff, for example. That's fine. We may store a few things, but again, furniture is heavy and bulky and not particularly valuable. And if thieves really want to steal my poor quality beds, I'm going to let them, because frankly, that's a whole lot better than having them fight my dwarves. Yeah, but here's the catch. So, Owl, you can get away with that by making sure that you always have the requisite number of seeds uh, in your work order. So let's say I was planting rock nuts, and I know that rock nuts are going to get pressed for oil. And I want to make sure that I reserve enough rock nuts to plant so that I can continually be able to press my rock nuts and maintain enough for my farming. I can tell them to press rock nuts as long as the oil is less than this amount, and as long as there are at least enough rock nuts plus a small amount for eating, just in case my dwarves get hungry and I didn't remember to turn them off in the kitchen, plus a small amount for eating. So if I need 50 to plant all my plots, I can say as long as there are at least 60 rock nut seeds, and you're done. And at that point, they'll only press the rock nuts if they have the requisite number of seeds to plant. They'll never run out. They'll constantly be renewing. And any excess that we end up with, they'll press for oil automatically for me. You really can automate just about everything in your fortress using the new manager tool. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's incredible. It does require that you pay attention. It does require a little bit of minutia in terms of its setup, but it's going to provide you the same kinds of functionality that Workflow did. with a small caveat. Workflow was working all the time and would trigger immediately if the conditions were met, and in this it's going to wait for one game day, so there'll be a small delay. And if you don't have a job that's going to run longer than a day, then your dwarves are going to spend a little more time socializing than they might with a repeat job, for example. So there are some small downsides, I guess. But yeah, I mean, literally, you can automate just about everything. I'm not sure you could automate shearing. Maybe you could set that up. Um, I'd have to look. I mean, shearing's a job, but I don't think you can guarantee the outputs. So I think it would just shear anytime it was available. In my case, I think I would just put the job on shear and have it just infinitely repeat at that point, since I really only want it'll only shear when there's animals to do it, and I don't really care about the spam once a day. That's not a big deal. So, folks out there in the audience who've played a lot of Dwarf Fortress and who've played substantial amounts on the new version, which, for the record, guys, dropped in about June, I think, of this year. So it's been a while since I've actually been able to play. How are you using the workflow orders, the new manager system in your fortresses? How are you putting it to work? I can already see the same kinds of uses that I would have gotten out of workflow originally on my schedule of things I'm going to set up. Food and drink orders to make sure that we don't run out when I'm not paying attention because I'm busy with something else. Necessary requisition orders so that we always have a uniform set on hand for new squads of military dwarves, and a monthly or so uh, skill use repetition so that our guys don't get rusty, for example. Yeah, monthly checks to make sure that I have the requisite number of certain types of furniture that I'm going to use a lot of. If, for example, we're going to build all our tables out of marble, I want to make sure that I have, 20 marble tables on hand at all times. So how about it, guys? What use are you guys getting out of your work orders? I mean, like I said, I can already see incredible potential for this. This is I hesitate to overuse the word game changing, but in the case of Dwarf Fortress, this was game changing when Workflow came out, and now that it's vanilla, it most definitely changed the game. Obviously. All right, so uh, at that point, we're basically allowing everything that I want to be able to store. We're not manufacturing coins. We won't have any refuse and corpses. I'll leave where they lay for now, or I'll move them to a garbage area or a dumping spot. I don't want those underground in our fortress if possible. So that takes care of everything we want in our main stockpile. It's set up to take from anywhere, and later on we'll set this up to stop taking, and we'll have it give out all of its ingredients to various stockpiles, and as they drain it, we'll eventually get rid of it and repurpose this room. Technically, Dev, I have to say that we're learning together because I haven't really had a whole lot of use out of the new system. But like I said, seeing how it implements basically all of the functionality of workflow, it basically is going to supplant workflow completely in the new version, which is just awesome. I can't tell you how head over heels in love I am with the fact that Toady implemented it. Yay! Seriously, like cue the hallelujah music here, kids, for real. Our dwarves who have the hauling labor will start moving things down here once they no longer have other jobs to do. So we have 2 crafter miners that aren't doing anything. Now keep in mind, although I have 4 guys on mining duty, only 2 of them have my custom profession. So these guys are standing around not because they're lazy, but because over here in Therapist, I've disabled every other job than mining, and since right now I don't have any jobs for them to mine, they're free to stand around, consume my booze, and do nothing, which is, not good generally. Some idle time is not a bad thing, but this early on, dwarf labor is kind of at a premium because we have so few of them, and so it's important that we kind of keep our dwarves moving on, progress for the fort whenever possible. So these guys I do want to have mining, so we're going to have to start laying out a little more of our fort here. And let's see, I want to put in a right angle turn here so that nobody can shoot bolts down this corridor into our fortress. Alright, now I'm going to do a little trick here. I'm going to set up, pause the game real fast, I'm going to set up a hotkey with this funny name here. Set up a hotkey called Dig Circle. Alright, now this hotkey is actually a shortcut behind the scenes to an old, somewhat deprecated function in dfhack that basically allows us to call one of the jobs from the hotkey. Dig Circle is a really handy tool for those of you who like circular rooms in your fort. I strongly recommend all new players go out and look. It doesn't do anything you can't do manually. I can manually lay the same rooms out that I'm going to use Dig Circle for, but Dig Circle can do it quickly and efficiently with a given radius, and I don't have to worry about, did I do it wrong, did I botch something, and it's actually really nice. So what we will do is we will set up a Dig Circle filled 15. Now this is kind of, and don't worry about the can't get cursor coordinates errors. I'm not in dig mode over here, so it's not doing anything. That's fine. Once dig circle is queued up like this, it will dig this same circle anytime I call the dig circle command. So a future invocation of it need only be dig circle. And it will dig that same circle over and over again until I gave it new directions. Now the advantage here is that since I'm going to make a lot of these dig circle filled 15s, I can set up a hotkey real quick like this. Come out into dig mode, hit the hotkey, and instead of changing the camera location, because I didn't set it up to have a camera location, it will simply execute the dig circle command. And it will give me a roughly circular room, 15 units across. This is actually a really efficient, compact design. If you get really big with your rooms, or if you start sprawling out horizontally, your fortress becomes less and less efficient. Your dwarves take time to transit all the distances between things. So when you start to think about production chains, it's from the seed they've got to go. So that your dwarf is in the meeting hall. He's got to go from there to the seed barrel to get the seed. He takes the seed and he runs from there to the farm plot. He plants the seed. Then when the seed grows up, somebody's got to harvest the seed, take it for the plant, take the plant from there to a stockpile. Somebody else has to take that plant from the stockpile to the kitchen. From the kitchen, where it's now a prepared food, they have to take it to another stockpile. And then finally, somebody in the meeting hall is going to move from the meeting hall to eat that prepared meal. They're going to go fetch that meal and take it back to the dining room. And all of those transits, every single one, takes time. If your dwarves are running from point to point, they're not completing work. They're not getting anything done. So generally speaking, you want to keep your fortress small, and you want to keep things as close together as possible. Now, there's a couple ways to do that. One is to make your rooms smaller, which works and helps, but has a limit. There's only so small you can make workshop rooms because they have to be big enough to hold the workshop and allow access in and out for the dwarf. And some rooms gain benefits by being larger. There's the ability to add more furniture. So, for example, your meeting hall being larger is nice because a really big meeting hall can hold lots of furniture and be really, really valuable, even though any individual piece of furniture in it might not necessarily be all that wealthy or valuable itself. So, the compromise is not to spread out horizontally on a single level, but to stack your levels vertically. Moving vertically is one step, just like moving horizontally. So a really tall fort would be, really bad too, but you're going to spread out a little on each floor, and what you end up with is drastically shorter distances between everything in your fort. Everything actually ends up being somewhat, in an abstract sense, spherical in nature, centered on the center of these pancakes. And so somebody will be on the edge of this floor, and their distance to the maximum radius of the farthest stockpile they'll have to go to is 6 or 7 steps to the center of the staircase, 6 or 7 steps to the bottom, 6 or 7 steps out to the far edge of the staircase, and you're looking at most 18 steps for any given job. No matter what it is, no matter how badly laid out, it's not going to be a long route. And we're not going to lay our fortress out badly, but this will cut down on your overall transit time enormously for your fort. Now, there's all kinds of ways you can set up your central access. I've seen it done with ramps. I've seen it done with spiral staircases. For those of you who are familiar with the cliffs at Dover and the fortress there, you know that the three staircases that kind of spiral around the great shaft there. All of those work, and depending on what you're wanting to do, if you want to do something aesthetically pleasing, you certainly can. For myself personally, I stick with the old tried and true 3x3 central staircase. There are some downsides to it. There are some upsides to it. The upsides are it's incredibly efficient in terms of transit steps. Your dwarves can move around one another on the staircases adequately. There's more than enough room to shuffle to the edges and then back to the center as they transit up and down the staircases to work around one another. Nobody's going to end up crawling over one another to get through the staircases. A downside is that somebody at the very top of the staircase who falls will fall all the way to the bottom of the staircase before they land. This can have predictable and unfortunate consequences if you station your barracks at the very top, for example. In our case, the barracks is going to be right here, actually. This is going to be the entrance where the barracks is. So anybody who invades our fort is going to go, the first room they enter will actually be not just a security room, but actually the room where all my dwarves at any given moment who are in the military are training. So every dwarf in my army is going to be in that one small room when they open the door. That's an enormously powerful defense against anything other than a massed siege. Now, the downside, of course, is, like I said, if a dwarf falls down, they could fall all the way down the staircases. And since we're going to have a barracks here, guys are going to be training, they're going to be knocking one another down, and theoretically, somebody's going to knock one another down on top of the staircase. That's not a good thing. We want to avoid that. So the way we avoid it is simply to throw some hatches over the staircases that lead down, and that prevents anybody from falling down them, unless they're open. Technically, it's possible, but it won't happen. So anybody who gets thrown around in the barracks, for example, won't fall all the way to the bottom of the fort before they land. That'll prevent that problem. If you really wanted to get creative, you could probably make a minecart route that would, route your dwarves from station to station. But I think that keeping your dwarves off the tracks would quickly become problematic. I've messed with minecarts a little bit for quantum stockpiles, which we'll get into in a moment. I kind of wanted to show people the normal default methods before I start showing them all the exploits and tricks. We'll go ahead and let our miners get back to work here because we have to kind of wait on them a little bit. And at this point, we should have 0 idlers. And I don't mean you idlers out there in the audience. I mean those idlers over here doing the work. You can see them starting to haul goods to the stockpile now here. So this is stuff that they're starting to accumulate from the wagon. Our picks and tools and such. Hey, I haven't heard sound since. Let's do this right. that should kind of, it's probably not going to impact because it's not quite still a little loud. Okay, so at this point you should now be able to hear me a little better over the desktop audio because we're kind of scaling it back a little bit. So even at its maximum volume, it should probably be well below me at this point. That better, guys? Can't turn SoundSense up for my own benefit at this point. There we go. Now I can listen along. Nice. That should work a little better. Make sure that doesn't creep up too high because of the SoundSense here. Let's turn it down a little bit more. There. At that point it should be capped out well below where I am, and you should have no problem being able to hear it. Right on. Okay, so now that everything's set up and I can actually hear SoundSense so that later on when my fort is bigger I can hear what's going on. You'll have to bear with me. I changed streaming software about 3 days before our stream here from the Open Broadcaster Classic to Open Broadcaster Studio. It's much more full-featured, but I'm still becoming accustomed to it. Last night I had a problem with push-to-talk, couldn't figure out what was wrong, and I realized I had the desktop audio on push-to-talk and not my mic. So people were only hearing the desktop audio from my trial fort from my broadcast when I was pushing the button down, which is hilarious because I didn't actually have any sound, so I wasn't controlling anything. Not even a whisper of my voice, or... The SoundSense at the moment is not playing anything. So let's make sure SoundSense is actually playing something so you can hear it. Yeah, I turned off the music and just had manual playback, so when it ran out of manual, when Tankard Basher here ended, there wasn't anything else. Okay, so now we've got... So let's look at where we're at here just for a moment. We've got our first room dug out. We've already said, hey, that's going to be the barracks. So let's go up a few floors. Let's see how far up we have to go before we start hitting sand. I don't want to dig in the first surface layer if I can avoid it. There are problems with having to deal with trees collapsing on your fortress, for example, that I want to avoid. If, for example, I dug directly under these trees right here, and I felled the trees, their logs would punch through the roof, and if I was building in my standard pancake stack design, those logs would continue to punch through roofs all the way down to the bottom of my fortress because there wouldn't be a solid floor anywhere below them until the bottom. They would punch floor by floor like they were dropping through the top of a skyscraper, and nothing would stop them. They would kill anything in the way. It would be a horrifying mess. So I don't want to dig in the first floor. I want to leave that solid so that anything that does fall on the surface doesn't punch into my fortress. But we'll go down a little below that, and we'll start digging farm spaces. So we have to extend our central staircase up. And the reason I haven't really extended this, like I said, is I kind of want to make sure that things get dug out in the order I request them. So now we're going to go up, and we'll go all the way to... There's the surface level. I want to go one below, and I want to go one below that. And I'll change this top floor from an up-down, because I'm not really going to need to ever go above this, to a down. And then I'll go in the center here, and I'll invoke Dig Circle. And there's my farm. That's what it's going to look like. And so my dwarves, when they wake up from their nap on the floor, right here where they're snoozing, they'll dig this staircase all the way up, they'll dig my farms out, and then I'll have some cavern space or some empty space that I can build farms in. Now this is still soil here, so I'm going to dig this out as well. This is probably rock, but I'm going to dig that out now as well. And so those 3 floors will comprise my farming and animal areas where I'm doing all of my livestock, all of my farming, all of my food, all of my initial food creation. Not necessarily my food processing. We'll store that stuff in a main raw food stockpile here, and then below that we'll have kitchens and food preparation, and then dining room, hospital, And then below that is our barracks, right off that. And then below that we'll have the workshop areas as we go down deeper into the fortress. Now you might notice that there's not a lot of space between, say, for example, the barracks and, oh, I don't know, the forges, for example, if they were on this floor. That's correct. There's not a lot of space between them. It's a fairly compact design. Unfortunately, that does mean that it's a short distance from the entrance of the fort to the tasty, tasty crafters that you're supposed to be keeping safe. It's up to us to make sure that we get some defenses in line and in place before we get to that point. So we don't yet have a place for our dwarves to sleep. We don't have any beds made. We need to take care of that. We need to get our farms up and running, and at that point, we are approaching self-sustaining, believe it or not. And I'm going to push the beds first so that they get done before the shields, because I'm a little more concerned with getting the furniture at this point so that my dwarves have some place to sleep. And although it's just going to be an empty rock room for the moment, that's better than sleeping in the mud or the cold stone. And as you can see, the main stockpile is starting to fill up. That's good. Now, already we've created a defensive vulnerability. If you haven't played before, you're probably not going to notice it right away. But here's the catch. Right over here is the entrance to our fort, where all our goods are being stored. All our valuable stuff is being stashed. There's nothing actually between the outside world and the entrance. And once they're inside, there's nothing between the entrance and them. And the good stuff. It's like right there. So people can walk in and steal our stuff. That's not a good thing. In order to keep sneak thieves out of our fortress, what we're going to want to do is station a few dogs around the entrance, just as a precaution. I don't honestly expect the dogs to maul any invaders or stop a siege by themselves, but having a few dogs stationed. Actually, I'm going to get rid of that, so I'm going to make it a little bigger. Make that sound a little bigger so that my dogs have a little room to roam without getting too far from the entrance. And then we'll make that into a pasture, and we will assign our dogs to it, at least some of them. And I think I'll probably assign the females because that will kind of corral their puppies when they happen as well. And the male dogs can stay on the wagon, and that's fine. Animals and dwarves will tend to scare away most sneaky animals from the wagon, and your dogs will actually attack things that come too close if they're prey animals or hostile invaders. But your dogs are not going to repel armored invaders. They're not going to be able to stop a siege, not by themselves. And really, they're not a huge amount of use en masse with dwarves. They're just they make good meat shields, I guess, which is what we're raising them for. That and the ability to sniff out the hidden invaders who might try to sneak in. So we'll get those. Our dwarves will come along, snag dogs, and start moving them off to the pasture space there here in a moment. But everybody's still busy doing all this hauling at the moment. All right, so let's do the same thing we did before with our carpenter's workshop here in the metalsmith's forge. We'll go in and we'll create a work order for those things we're going to want to create. We'll queue up a couple of work orders. Let's create bronze. Not bronzer. This is not a cosmetics workshop. Now, obviously, we probably don't have the silver to make 10 warhammers. I don't think we were that lucky with our tetrahedrite. We probably don't have enough left to make enough to get enough silver to make 10 warhammers. That's fine. I don't care. Um, we'll either get silver further in, or we'll just take what we can get and call it good. We won't need a whole lot of warhammers to start. We only have 7 dwarves. The only reason I'm cranking these out now is because I can get this bronze chewed through and get it stored away as weaponry, and then at that point it's useful to us there. If you're expecting to embark in particularly hostile wilds, you may want to skip making, for example, multiple classes of weapons and instead go for armor. Bronze makes reasonable armor. It's not the best by any stretch. The same general rules apply for armor that apply for edged weapons in general. Copper is the worst, bronze is a little better, iron is a little better, so steel is a little better. Now, whether iron and bronze are actually better or interchangeable, or whether bronze might be a little better, is kind of up for debate. I've seen it both ways. Generally speaking, I don't make a lot of bronze armor. We try to move directly into steel if we can. But early on, we don't have the materials. We simply don't have the iron. We don't have the flux. We don't have the dwarf manpower to run a real steel industry. So it's not necessarily a bad idea to think about manufacturing some armor to protect your dwarves. If you only can pick one piece, pick a helmet. If a dwarf is knocked out or disabled, the enemies will automatically attack their head over and over again, and so if their head is armored, they will sit there and bash on the helmet all day long rather than the unarmored chest, legs, and other veiny bits of your dwarf, which might cause him to bleed out. And so a guy who is disabled can actually survive for a lot longer if he's got a helmet than if he's got a breastplate. Killing blows go for the head, in essence. So if you can only make one piece of armor, you make a helmet. And yes, I'm queuing up 10 of these, even though I only have 7 dwarves, and all of my dwarves aren't even going to be in the military anyway, probably. That's okay. I have a fair amount of bronze to chew through, and as long as I do these things in the priority order I care about, when I run out of bronze, whatever I've got, I'm going to be quite happy with. We are not expecting our full-time soldiers to equip bronze weapons. We can make other things out of them. So as I look this over, rather than doing what we're doing here, we're going to make some bronze discs for purposes of traps and or selling. Bronze discs are trap components. Imagine, if you will, a giant serrated saw blade, and you have the right idea. These can be mounted into weapon traps where they will lunge out of the wall and mince oncoming foes. Bronze, being a reasonable weapon material, actually makes them reasonably effective even against armored targets. Not great, but effective. And large numbers of serrated discs can decimate large numbers of attackers. The discs attack multiple times per disc, and you can mount up to 10 of them in a trap, which means an opponent has to dodge and or block up to 30 attacks per step through a well-trapped area. That's an incredible number of attacks to be blocking. You can actually wear invaders out, cause them to pass out on the trap with predictable results. However, bronze discs are also reasonably valuable. We can use them as sale goods when the caravan arrives. This will allow us to trade rather than confiscating the caravan's goods like we've done in prior broadcasts. And since we have more bronze than we know what to do with really anyway, making a few discs that we can decide what to do with later isn't necessarily a bad thing to have on hand. As before, I'm going to make some helmets, and although I'm going to make helmets, I'm going to promote the Warhammer job. And the reason I want these 3 jobs at the beginning is because our armor smith is doing other things, and I kind of want to keep him doing those other things for now, while our weaponsmith can still get busy on making these other items. Oh, wait. Oh, let's get this done again. Forgot to add my conditions. Okay, now let's add our conditions to these because we want to make sure that we don't. I want to make sure whenever I'm making something out of particular materials that I leave myself some surplus for other purposes. Now, I don't really care about the bronze and the silver here, so if I were doing these in a real job, I'd want to make sure that I didn't use up all my bronze making picks or all my bronze making discs, because somebody might suddenly decide that hey, look, I'm now the expedition leader. Hey, look, I'm now the mayor. Oh, look, I'm now the king, and I demand that you make me bronze items. And you're screwed if you've used up all your bronze, for example. So you want to make sure you maintain at least some stockpile of every material you can get your hands on, solely for appeasing nobles that you don't want to get rid of immediately. For these jobs, I'm not too worried about it, I guess. Now that I'm thinking about it, we can go ahead and make our 10 of each of these, and I don't really care if there's anything left over, because the whole point is to use up what we brought with us. So in hindsight, I didn't need to delete those after all. Dope. All right, so let's go back downstairs and see how our miners are progressing. They started to get their floors dug out. Yep, yep. They're gonna dig. They're gonna slowly chew through this terrain. Early on, getting our stuff below ground and getting our initial living spaces dug out is probably your highest priority. Until you have, in fact, think about it. Oh, this next floor this is all sand, so they'll dig this out pretty quickly. So that's okay. We can let them go. There's not that much stone left. Sand is faster to dig out than stone, so if you really are in a hurry, make sure to dig only the minimum number of staircases in the stone layers and go straight for the farms, and then dig those out first instead of designating all these floors at once and letting the dwarves pick. Because as you can see, rather than start with the farms at the top, they've started with the food processing or food storage area down here at the bottom. That's not ideal. And dwarves never finish a floor before they move on to something else, so we're going to get partial mining on a lot of floors, but that's okay. We'll get enough started that we can get our farms planted. And as you can see, they've now moved on to yet another floor, because they never finish one before they move to another one. I've never seen them do it. And I'm not even sure what the AI uses to make its pathfinding decisions with respect to floors, because you can see they cut more out of this one than they did this one before they moved on. But there's definitely an overlay there where they've decided that this is the point where they'll leave off for whatever reason. It's just, I'm not sure why they do it. Now, once they get down to this point, I know why they're going back and forth. The pathfinding says that these paths are... This is the closer job from wherever it's measuring, basically. But I find it hard to believe that whatever we're measuring does it floor by floor that way. All right, now, since these are soil layers, we don't have to do any creative irrigation to get mud. Sand is perfectly viable for building our crop plots on, so we're going to go ahead and get our plots built, and I generally go with 5x5s. These are much bigger than you need for your initial 7 dwarves, but keep in mind you're not going to have 7 for very long, and at some point you're going to need more. You probably don't need anywhere near this much for your first, I don't know, 50, 60 dwarves easily off this, I'm guessing. Once you get to the point where you need more space, you'll know it, and you can start to excavate more. By then, we will have supplementary food sources like fish and meat, and we'll be able to rely on those for part of our foodstuffs as well. So when we go to expand, we won't necessarily have to expand our farms all that much. How you lay your farms out is up to you. I like this because it's nice and geometric. But I've done stripes. I've done slots in the ceiling to grow under surface crops above ground. In fact, we should probably do that too. While I'm thinking about it, I should show you guys how to do that. See if Toadie's fixed that problem yet. So there's a bug, if you will. Yeah, we'll do it off the side of this one. Okay. Now, the reason I have off-centered this one floor like this is because this one is actually directly below the surface. So if a tree collapses and punches a hole in this roof, that's bad, but it won't go plunging all the way down through my fortress to kill everybody on the way down. So it'll hit the solid floor below it and stop. So we'll only have risk on this one area here, and then of course the risk that's caused by somebody potentially getting in through the hole. That won't happen on this area above our fort because there's a solid floor above it. So anything that fell here would hit the solid floor there and stop. And then this stuff below it here would be completely safe. So we'll use the ramps and we'll offset that floor over to the left. Now what I'm going to do with this is dig out a special conservatory for surface crops. Glass blocks I could use, yeah, technically, if I really wanted to. You can use stone. I actually had a picture out there. Somebody asked me, well, how can you make windows out of, or how can you justify what I'm getting ready to do here with stone windows? And I linked some early medieval, some early and pre-medieval designs where they've carved stone windows, basically just grates, really. All right, and we'll leave this alone for now. But what I'm going to basically do is cut some slots or holes in this floor and then floor them back over so that they're solid again. And what should happen, if it's working the same as it did in prior versions, is that we'll be able to grow our surface crops directly here in this conservatory, if you will, safely indoors and away from invaders. Now this is where we're going to store all of our food for the most part, with a few exceptions. I don't want unprepared fish. Oops. I don't want unprepared fish. I don't want drinks for now. They already have a stockpile. I don't want seeds. I'm going to put them somewhere else. I don't want any of my animal extracts being moved here right away. I'll use them up immediately instead. And the miscellaneous liquids, this is not a food stockpile. So this is a food stockpile, so that shouldn't be there. And this is not a prepared food stockpile, so we'll get rid of that as well. So that leaves raw materials, basically, that can be moved into food or that are produced, in the case of oils, from the food we're going to be processing. Milled plants, cheeses, all this stuff can be produced on site, basically, is what we're going to end up with. The floor below this one we'll use for food processing, and so this is going to be our raw goods, or raw food stockpile. And we'll set it up to take from our initial stockpile, our temporary stockpile. And basically what we're creating here is a logistics chain. Anything that was stored in that initial stockpile that now qualifies for this stockpile will be drained out of the other stockpile and stored here. This allows you to set up entire chains of logistics. You can link your workshops to your stockpiles, and therefore they'll take only the goods from those stockpiles. If you want to guarantee that you are making only the highest quality goods, and ideally I'd like to do that at some point, with our whole god of lust and depravity and wealth thing going on in here. Yes, it probably did say Gila Monster Venom. Yes, it probably did. If you were curious about the settings for extracts, yes, I'm reasonably sure that was in the list, in fact. Extract animal, bark scorpion venom, Gila monster venom, donkey's milk, giant Gila monster venom, Gila monster man venom, brown recluse spider man venom. Yeah, it's got everything in the list regardless. So if you needed to, and the list is far longer than you probably care about, generally you want to probably handle these things all as one set. If you really want to make sure that your bark scorpion venom is stored somewhere else, you'll have to make sure that you're a little more explicit with your stockpiles. But if you want to make sure milk goes to next to your cheese workshop, for example, you'll have to make sure that you do just those things. In our case, we're not going to be producing or using any of the venoms. Toady hasn't implemented those quite yet. Dwarves can't poison their weapons in Fortress mode, or won't poison their weapons in Fortress mode. And they don't extract poisons, I don't think, from animals yet currently. So even if we had poisonous animals to milk, I don't think the dwarves can, and even if they can, I don't think they would use the product, so we would only be creating venom for sale at that point, and it's not particularly valuable and useful. Not in the current version, as far as I know. I don't think you can harvest... Okay, so first off, I'm not sure you can harvest the sentients regardless. Maybe they sell their venom to traders, I guess, potentially, but I don't think you can harvest them for it. Now, when it comes to animals, at some point, yes, that's going to be a thing. There is or there was that's probably going to fall under animal care and small animal dissection in some cases. But like I said, it's not yet implemented, so Toady may decide to go a different direction. He may implement a skill specifically for that. He loves his specificity. So venoms do exist, and they do work as advertised. I mean, a giant spider bites your dwarves. The venom really does exist and really does have effects on your dwarves. It's bad. It's theoretically possible, and in adventure mode, you can poison your weapons. It allows you, the systems are in place to allow you to do so, but the AI does not do so for you. Has he implemented it, Plutonium? That's nice. That's good. But do the dwarves do anything with it but sell it yet? Because, I mean, realistically, if all the dwarves are going to do is harvest this venom and sell it, it's of no value to me. It's not particularly valuable as an extract, and I have to go through the process of killing the spiders and retrieving them and then processing them. It's hilarious, but you look at the elves. They hate it when you sell wood back to them, but they have no problem selling wood to you. Oh, our wood is special. We grew it for this purpose. You're harvesting a living life form. Give me my exotic animals and get out of my fortress. All right, so let's see what we got here. We got our farm started. We've got our conservatory ready. We're going to set up a second farm area here at some point, but we don't need it right yet. Off of this room, we're going to dig a small side chamber for our birds. This will be where we build all our nesting facilities for all our blue peacocks and blue peahens to start producing eggs and more birds. We'll put a door on this, stick some nest boxes in here, and call it good. The birds do not have to graze like normal grazers do. They don't, the feeding of birds is for the moment below the level of simulation and not concern. It's of no concern to us. So we can basically stash them in a bare rock room, and they don't starve to death. So we're good. Likewise, pigs are not grazers, and pigs can be stored on bare stone floors as well. So I like to generally get a couple pigs as early as I can and stash them away to start producing more pigs.
As summer blazes on your face, dig deep your caves for cooler space.
It's not sexy, but this will get us a place to sleep. You can't be a miner. We don't allow miners in this broadcast. Oh, come on. I'm not even allowed terrible puns? Tough room. Tough room. And there's our first beds finally getting installed. That's good. Let's go ahead and get a depot built. We'll need that for trading a little bit. And we'll even make it out of bronze, because why not? I'm not sure what flicker you're referring to. If you mean the flicker over here with like this or this, that's normal. No, if I've got the materials to do it, and since they forced me to bring all this extra bronze, I do. I'm just going to go ahead and put up a bronze depot and call it good. We can steal the stuff from the Dwarven Caravan if we really want to, I guess. All right, and we're finally starting to run out of coke. Or rather coal, I should say, not coke. And soon we will run out of copper and tin bars, and then at that point we will have smelted everything down, and we can move all that stuff down below ground here. Looks like we probably need a couple more bins, because we have a lot of stuff here that probably is bin worthy here that doesn't have a storage space. Yeah, these are all bars, and they can be stored in a bin, so we need to make some more bins. Apparently, I set bins on the stockpile properly? Did people just not move the bins downstairs? Did we actually not create any bins? I thought I queued 2 up at the beginning. Did we fill them all already? That's possible, I suppose. Okay, and then that will get our bins for storage. We have plenty of wood to make them, Lord knows. From the bottom left, I don't think there should be anything coming in from the bottom left. And there's the flicker of the leaves dropping. Oh, you may be seeing... Okay, so if you're seeing a flicker, guys, let me know. There's an unusual weirdness with... I've sometimes seen it with Dwarf Fortress. When I zoom to certain levels, it will kind of... The bottom edge here will flicker. It's something to do with, I don't know, the screen resolution not being quite pixel perfect or something. And it kind of flickers like it's trying to change sizes a little bit. If it's the whole bottom half of the video, you should probably refresh your connection to Twitch, because I'm watching the stream on another monitor and it's not flickering for me. If it's the bottom edge, if it's just this edge down here, I've seen that happen before, where it'll get just a little discombobulated. All right, let's see. We've got a miner that's not doing anything because we don't have any mining jobs being done. Let's get that taken care of. That ought to keep them busy for a minute. A couple of our dwarves catching power naps. And now a little trick from DF Hack. Over here on the right, you can see I turned planning mode on. What that allows me to do is designate things that I don't yet have the materials for. So, for example, I know I'm going to want a door right here. And I'm going to want to have, you know, maybe a certain material or a decoration on it or a minimum quality or whatever. And I can set those things up. And then when that door finally is created, say, for example, I demanded that this be an artifact or masterwork door, then only once there was a masterwork door created would it be, or an artifact door created, would it be mounted on this spot. But by placing this, and I'm just going to use an ordinary door because I don't really care about the quality of this door here just yet. Once that's placed, though, once it's designated, the game treats it as though the door is actually there for purposes of other designations. It won't stop invaders. It doesn't actually act like a door. But, and then you can see that it marks the job as suspended. That's nice, and it tells you exactly what's going to get placed here. This is going to be an ordinary door of any quality with any materials. I don't care. It could be a wood door, stone door, high quality, low quality, decorated, not